I'm going to start with a statement by Sean Ellis. He basically says he likes asking users how would they feel if they could no longer use a product. And it is my favorite question. Have all of you heard about it? It kind of looks like this. Yeah, some of you don't know. Cool. I'm about to educate you on this. So the idea here is that if you don't have product market fit, you shouldn't be trying to grow. And there's a bunch of different ways to measure product market fit. This is my favorite way, and if you don't know it, you should definitely know it. Sean Ellis created it many years ago. He is the founder of Growth Hackers, and he also has, I forgot what he calls the product, but it's a whole like product to help you manage growth. And I think it's like projects.growthhackers.com or something like that. But either way, I'm sure many of you have seen the Growth Hackers site. So I'm going to get started, but I'm going to start with this question. So the question is, how would you basically ask your users this, and you ask them, how would you feel if you could no longer use this product? And the options are very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed, I no longer use this product. And I'll dive deep into all the questions that are in this survey. There's about 10 to 12 questions. They're really important in helping you understand whether you have product market fit and what to do about it. I still like using SurveyMonkey for it. You could use Typeform. It doesn't matter. The key to using, the reason I still use SurveyMonkey is because the way you can analyze data in SurveyMonkey on survey results is still better than anything else. They let you categorize the responses, do all these pivots and stuff, which ends up being really important, especially for this type of survey. So many years ago, when I was running a company called Kissmetrics, we actually did this survey on Google Analytics because we were essentially competing with them, and we wanted to understand how people felt about Google Analytics. So this kind of surveying to understand whether you have product market fit, you can also use with competitors and understand if they have product market fit. And when you're really early and you're a startup, it's likely that your competitors have more customers than you. So if you can go find a way to survey their users, you get a lot of gold about the market and how users people think about another product. So that's why we did that. And what we learned, and I'll tell you why later, but what we learned is that Google Analytics does have product market fit. And that means that people actually do like it, despite the fact that I'm sure many of you don't log into it ever. Okay, so the thesis here is that if you're above 40%, or if basically more than 40% of people are saying that they'd be very disappointed if your product no longer existed, that's a really good sign that you have product market fit. And one of the key, this is the key question, because you can basically segment all the other questions based on these responses. And a lot of the other questions are open-ended. So I'm actually going to go through different scenarios that you might hit. So if you want to go give this survey yourself and you don't want to use SurveyMonkey, or you just want like the cheat sheet for all the questions, it's at survey.io. So you can go to survey.io and go find it. There's a bunch of links in this talk, and I know the presentation's already in your internal marketing Hell Week thing. So feel free to check it out. So again, the keys to this question is that based on what people chose, you want to understand what they said about the other responses, but I'll get into that. So let's say that you don't actually have product market fit. Only like in this example, only like 18.5% of people said they'd be very disappointed, and 19.5% said they'd be somewhat disappointed. But really, most people said it isn't really that useful. So what do? Do you pack up and go home? Do you quit 500 startups? No, you don't do that. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So what you would do is you try to figure out everything you can about all three groups separately. So you try to see, okay, well, there are some people that really couldn't live with our product. What do they say about the product? How do they think about it? And that has to do with all the other questions, right? And then you also want to do that for the somewhat disappointed, because those folks are lukewarm. And, the people at the bottom don't really care too much. Many would say they don't give a shit about your product. And what you really want to understand is, what are the difference in these responses? So oftentimes what you'll see is that there's certain things like features in the product, certain number of photos uploaded, or ways that they describe your product, depending on what the product is, that causes them to be that passionate about it that they don't want it to go away. While all the folks that are at the kind of second 2 tiers, they haven't experienced that. So once you start digging into the responses, you can really understand what's going on. And I'm going to cut one question off right now because it's going to happen and come, which is, how many responses do I need? That's a very common question with this. The truth is, with just 30 responses, you can get a really good directional idea. You do need more responses than that. And so, if you have more users, that's better. If you have less users than 30 that you can get this survey response from, then get more users. Because you need enough people to be able to answer these kind of things, right? So this is another scenario. This is probably the more common one than even the other one, especially if you're in this room and are in the program, where people are more lukewarm than they are very passionate about the product. So this is one where it's 37% very disappointed, and then over, a little over 50% on somewhat disappointed. This is really cool because you're almost there. But the key, again, is that you want to figure out what's the difference between the two categories of responses. So you would look at all the other questions, which I'm going to go through, and what people said who were very disappointed and what people said who were somewhat disappointed. So an example from Google Analytics is that one thing we discovered is that people who are looking at their marketing channels tend to be in the bucket of they can't live without Google Analytics. People who aren't looking at their marketing channels, sources of traffic, or any of that kind of stuff actually fall in the other buckets. The reason is Google Analytics is very valuable, not just when you're looking at that pretty graph at the top and hopefully it's going up and to the right, which it usually isn't, unless you've done a lot of stuff about it. But it's when people are looking at their marketing channels in order to get more traffic or understand what their traffic's doing. So that's a way that we figured out, that even though Google Analytics had product market fit, we still wanted to know what caused it to have product market fit and what were the differences between the people who said they weren't disappointed and the people who said they would be disappointed if it didn't exist. So another question, just like I said, you have to segment all these questions by those different buckets. But here you can learn what alternatives people would choose if your product didn't exist. And this is a key question because a lot of times you don't think about things like competition or alternatives. And alternatives aren't always competition. They could answer something like nothing. And that's not necessarily the worst thing. But what you're trying to understand really deeply is, like, if they weren't using our product, what would they be using? And that's what this question really brings to light. And it can tell you what you're dealing with in terms of what people use before they even sign up for your product and what they were using previously. And then this one's one of the key questions, which is trying to explain and trying to understand what's the actual value proposition for your business and your product. And again, when you segment this by the most passionate folks, you can guess that you want more of those folks, so you want to know what they would say versus the other folks. And then what you do is you can turn these into multiple choice questions once you learn the open-ended responses on the next survey you do for hopefully a different cohort of people. And even if you don't do that because you don't have enough users or anything like that, you can take the responses here and start testing your value prop on your homepage or your email marketing or your cold emails or your app description and try to get more people that are, more passionate about your product by basically mimicking what the folks who are really passionate say in these responses. This one's great because, oftentimes there's like Net Promoter Score, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, and a bunch of methodologies around would you recommend this product and things like that. In this survey, when we ask this question, we don't really care if they recommend it or not, although that's great. What we're trying to get is, of the people who recommended it, how did they describe it? So this is another lens on your value proposition because it's basically the words that people say they use to describe your product to other people when they recommend it, if they recommend it. So it's a really powerful question. And again, you want to focus on the different segments and the differences between those buckets of people because it's usually not the same. So when someone's really passionate about your product, they're going to describe it differently than people who aren't passionate about it. And the surveying and the analysis will help you really hone in on that. And then this one's great too, because often when you're early, you've got a lot of different types of people using your product and you don't necessarily have a really narrow set of customers or groups of customers. So this question just asks people, what type of person do you think would benefit most from the product? And again, it's given us insights like, at Kissmetrics when we ran this surveying, we had a large group of marketers because it's an analytics tool, and a lot of them would said, oh, marketers would benefit. But what we found is that there were a much smaller segment, but an interesting one, that were actually product people that were using our product in a lot of different ways, but they actually had a higher product market fit score and were more likely to love the product. That didn't mean we pivoted the whole company towards product managers, but it was a really interesting learning that helped us unearth like a different segment that we didn't know about before. And then last but not least, this is always great, but this question's all about how can you improve the product? And obviously you want to improve it for everybody, but it's nice to know the difference between the people that are really passionate that you have product market fit with and what they want, because you don't want to lose that. And then also for all the rest of the folks, what they want. And I know I went pretty fast through that. I wanted to save time for questions and stuff, and I have quite a bit more slides too to share. With a group of few other folks, we actually got 700 responses to a product market fit survey for Slack. This was done a little while ago. So the responses are dated, but it'll give you even a deeper understanding and a breakdown of everything I talked about. And it's at, I guess, bit.ly Slack PMFit, whatever. You can find the link, the deck's in there. If you have enough users, more than 30, and you think you can do the surveying, I would highly recommend you check out what I wrote about Slack and an analysis. It was literally an equivalent of the type of analysis you folks are going to want to do. It's like 2,200 words. We spent a lot of time analyzing it, and it was 700 responses, and somebody read each and every one to come up with the analysis. So if you're questionable on how this stuff works still, it's probably one of the best things we've written about how to do the surveying. And there are other ways to assess product market fit, so I didn't want to just leave you with one thing on this topic. Again, how many of you actually know if you have product market fit? Oh, you do? You have product market fit? Hell yeah, okay, that's a lot of conviction in your face, I like it. Anybody else? Yeah? Okay, how did you find out? Oh, cool. Cool. Awesome, yeah, so that's a great proxy too, like interview the customers, yeah. And you? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I would go more rigorous, but it's okay. I'll share some more stuff on that. So this is Net Promoter Score. Again, it's an example that I received from Slack. There's a product called Delighted.com, and this can help you understand if people really are satisfied with your product. It's something from the corporate world. Bain & Company actually invented it, but it's still a good metric, and it's really quick and easy for people to put in there. And again, you can use Delighted.com and just email this out to your customers. I find this useful to understand customer satisfaction, but it's not as detailed or deep as the stuff I went over. Another thing I really like to do around product market fit is if you've got a sign-up process, especially like on the web or even a purchase process, it's actually cool and nice to ask people why they signed up. So we would use something like either Qualitative or Hotjar, or there's a whole bunch of tools that let you do a little pop-up surveying on the page. So just ask people, why did you sign up for the product today? And I know it sounds like a really simple question, but you can learn a ton of things. For example, a lot of us have a lot of copy on our marketing site. And so you might want to know exactly why they signed up and emphasize that copy. So if you don't do this, you're not going to know, out of all that copy, which one do most people care about and what should we be emphasizing. So this can be really useful too. I really like this too. This is actually an example from Intercom. I don't think they have this question anymore, but you can email people and ask the same thing or a similar thing. When you signed up, what expectations did you have for our product? Please reply. We'll give you, we read and respond to every answer. All those kind of things help you get a lot of responses, but this is really powerful too, especially right after people sign up. One of the reasons why I would recommend doing these things is the momentum that people have when they sign up for a product tends to not be the same ever again, meaning they're at their highest point of excitement about your product. And so getting a bunch of these answers out of them can be really helpful. Unless you're Facebook with a high retention rate, you're probably not going to have as much attention from people as you do when they sign up. Or you have a fantastic product like Apple or something like that, but most of us don't. Again, if you have e-commerce or any kind of purchase happening, whether it's even a SaaS product and it's a trial and then they purchase or whatever, asking them just why they bought is really powerful. Oftentimes people don't do this either. And again, it's the same thing. If you don't ask, you don't know. And if you don't know what's actually important on your marketing site with all your copy. This one's really great. How many of you have a website? All right, most of you, great. And even if you have an app, you better have a website, right? But anyways, these two are one of my favorites because you can put them on every page of your site. They're little pop-up surveys, and there's two key questions here. One is, what's the primary purpose of your visit today? So you can ask that question, and then if you have a ton of pages, you can actually segment it by the page they visited. So if you have like 10 products, and you want to understand out of those products, which ones are people actually ready to buy, this kind of question can be helpful. Now, if you've got a lot of pages that are getting either blog pages or like SEO pages, this second question can be really valuable. Even product pages on an e-commerce site. This question is, were you able to find the information you were looking for on this page, yes or no? The yes or no here can give you a score by page and tell you whether people found what they're looking for. What's more powerful is that when they say no, you say, please specify, or tell us more, or something like that. And they actually type it in. So again, it's one of those things where you learn what they say, and you learn what's missing, and then you can run experiments or just update the page if you don't have enough traffic to emphasize the things people are saying are missing. Oftentimes what we found on product pages when we run this survey is that there's some little thing buried at the bottom or buried in the middle of the description that's really important to people, and they don't notice it. And they say in here, oh, I couldn't find that. And so then what would you do? You would emphasize that because that's probably going to get you more purchases. If nothing else, it'll help you, get the information to the people, exactly the kind of information they want. This one's cool too. If you haven't done the surveying, but you have a ton, or much of surveying, but you have a ton of users coming back to your site, or even some of them, you can try to ask them to remember why they originally decided to use the product. It's not as powerful as like right when they sign up, but it can still be really useful. Yeah. Yeah, so you're not really caring about anybody that doesn't fill it out. You just care about the people that do. And you can time these things differently, like when they scroll halfway down the page, pop it up in 3 seconds, and things like that. What we've found is there's usually a 1 to 7% response rate on this stuff. And even in just like 3 or 4 or 10 responses here, you can get a lot of valuable data you didn't have before. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the question was, basically around response rate and if there aren't enough responses and things like that. You said it better than I did, but that was basically the question. Yeah. If you can ask the question with intercom, use intercom. If you can't ask the question with intercom in the way you need to here, don't use intercom, and use one of these things. Last I checked, they don't have a good mechanism to ask these kind of questions. Yeah, it's not really in the same format where you can do the yes, no's and the open-ended, but you should look at intercom. I know they're iterating a lot, but I tend to like these tools because these tools integrate into your analytics and pass the data into them, so you can segment by things like what are people who are coming back a lot saying versus people that are not. So this is more of like a behavior analysis, while I would say intercom is much more of a communication tool. So, choose your own adventure on that, but I've found that these specialized tools tend to be better for this purpose, but you can get started with intercom for sure. So this is another great one. When you have, especially in like a SaaS product, you usually have some kind of workflow, like you're trying to fit into their work, right? And trying to help them with their work, help them do their job better, help them reduce friction. So this question is really cool, where you can ask it like on your dashboard or something and just say, how does Qualitative fit into your workflow? You can even make it even more generic, but in a good way, and say, how does Qualitative fit into your daily activities as a marketer? If you want to be really specific. And these can be really valuable because then you can understand different points of interaction and how people actually use your product without having to, exactly, although this is great, but without having to like shadow them and sit right next to them at work, which is also a great thing to do. But this also works. Again, I know I harped on alternatives before, but it's really great to ask questions like this, like which other options did you consider before choosing Qualaroo? Qualaroo is just the product name. Replace it with your product name. Which of our competitors, both online and offline, did you consider before choosing Qualaroo? So again, these things help you understand alternatives, which are all ways to do marketing. So for example, if you learn that Google actually has a survey tool, so people use Google surveys instead of Qualaroo, or they put Google surveys in here. What we started doing once we saw a lot of those is we actually started creating those competitor landing pages, and basically said Qualaroo versus Google surveys, and built out those pages based on some of the information from some of these people. That was really valuable. So again, many times in a startup, you're not supposed to worry about competitors, but if your customers care about competitors, you should care about them too. Again, this is a really great one where you can ask people what frustrates them about the problem your product solves. So at Kissmetrics, we would ask people pretty much right after they signed up in kind of a welcome-like email. This was actually an example from there. We would ask them what frustrates you with analytics, or what frustrates you with measuring your marketing using analytics. And we, like I said, we tell people we read and respond to every response, which everyone likes, and you get a much higher response rate. Another one that's really cool, if you have a SaaS product, or even during refunds in checkout or whatever, asking them why they're canceling can be really useful. If you're a really early stage in SaaS, you might even make them call you. And another interesting one could be text you to cancel. And the reason you want them to do that is just so you can get more information about why they're canceling. You're not trying to make it hard for them to cancel. You're trying to get the feedback so you can really understand why the hell they're canceling. Because if they're canceling, that's really bad, right? You're losing money. Again, you can do the same thing here where there's a whole survey you can ask them after they cancel, which I found to be valuable. So I'm gonna give the example of the survey. We basically ask questions like, what is the primary reason why you canceled? How has your product how has this product benefited you? Which I know sounds weird because they're canceling, but it's really great because they did sign up, did start using it, and possibly were paying you, and then they canceled. So that's really good. And then what can we change to make you want to continue using it? And then obviously what describes your role at the company, because that's pretty important too. So this is what I like to say. And again, I'm harping on competitors, but most of the markets all of you are in have a lot of competitors. So you can use all this surveying, all the same stuff. You can use Twitter, you can use Facebook ads, you can use all these things to actually go survey your competitors, customers. And by having that knowledge, you can understand at least how people think about them. And if you're competitive to them, it's really important to understand things like that. And this is my Mr. T transition. So he pities the fool. I do too. I love dating. Anyways, this is a common scenario that I sit in all size companies. And that's because one of the first things I like to get to is I like to get to the spreadsheet, which is either the financials or the P&L or the marketing spreadsheet. And oftentimes people don't know why it's going down or why it's going up. And in an early stage company, that's, the normal shit show that you see. I think companies are shit shows forever, so don't take that personally. But this is what, one of my missions is to prevent this problem, because we're not going to grow our businesses, we're not going to grow ourselves, we're not going to make the money we want, serve our customers, if we don't know why whatever's happening is happening. So a lot of the other stuff I talk about has to do with that. Again, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. This is the author of Alice in Wonderland. I don't think they knew where they were going. Maybe they did. Even Albert Einstein agrees. He says, how we think determines what we measure. So now I'm going to transition and talk about how we all should be thinking, kind of, about growth, because that's what this talks about, apparently. Yeah? They were all from Qualaroo, the little ones. Yeah. And in the deck, I have links to them and everything. But you can use Hotjar. Apparently, Intercom has some stuff like that too. So it's just a polling, questioning mechanism. Yeah. Yeah. SurveyMonkey's for the long form surveys, kind of like Typeform. Qualaroo is for the pop-ups on your website, and Hotjar has the same feature too. So I know all of you love Intercom or use it or don't love it and don't use it, but it's not the end all be all for this type of qualitative research. It's definitely great for customer communication though, right? There's a few small startups that let you do that, but nothing I found that's at some scale that you would use. We started doing a lot of this stuff internally because we wanted to log it to our database. And so an engineer spent an hour and built that email and started doing that. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can even just use any email tool and just look at all the replies and all that. Because you're not necessarily trying to count it. You know, you're just trying to get a lot of qualitative, like what the voice of your customer, as kind of they say in corporate land. Yeah. Yeah, sure. So I actually forgot your question. So why don't you repeat it? Yeah. It was about Intercom and it was about what's the right way, what's the right tool to use for the surveying was kind of the question. And apparently Intercom just has open-ended Q&A. Yeah.
So about the survey tools, do you prioritize not showing the survey tools during certain very focused calls, not to get that user experience, or do you emphasize email because they can get back? Do you have any nuance there on when to do that?
Yeah. So the question was when to use the different surveying on your website, right? So when you use a surveying, you are going to get some form of a decrease in your conversion rate, right? Maybe. Sometimes you get an increase because you're actually asking people things and engaging with them. It just depends on what you're asking. What I tend to do on our teams is we'll go make sure it's something we want to improve, and we're okay with taking a conversion hit because the learnings we're going to get are more valuable than the revenue we're losing or the conversions we're losing. So you would identify places where there's big bottlenecks and a lot of people are bouncing, and then put the surveys on those pages if you're worried about losing conversions. Yeah, I mean, typically what we're trying to do, email is definitely a lower response rate typically than the on-page surveying, but the on-page surveying is a lot more precise. So you know what page they were on, you know a lot more about them, like what refer they came from, and you can do a lot of that targeting too. The big thing there is just if you're ready to run an experiment or you're ready to improve that page, then you should be doing this qualitative surveying or you won't get the holistic picture of what's wrong. Anybody else on the surveying stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, so would you suggest, we're enterprise B2B, would you suggest using surveys for prospective customers?
Yeah, absolutely. On your website, they're coming, visiting around, bouncing around.
Just email out, like even like customers or prospective customers we have in the funnel.
Yeah.
Having conversations with.
Yeah. The best thing I've seen is you said the magic word, but you're having conversations with them already. So you could instead start incorporating some of these questions in the conversations. So when sales folks start asking these questions, or founders, whatever they're selling, it's a really powerful tool. So think about asking some of these questions like, why'd you sign up today? Even before you continue, right? So on sales calls, oftentimes we incorporate that into our scripts. That way we can learn why they signed up. And so it's kind of like the methodology of before we get started and I show you what's going on with the product, I'd love to learn a little bit more about why you actually got on this demo, right? And that's a similar way to say it, but it's really powerful on so many levels. So one, it's more powerful than this stuff if you have a conversation with them and are in that mode, because it gets them to think about themselves and it gets them to think about why the hell they're talking to you. And then you understand why they're talking to you and you can tailor what you say and emphasize whatever it is the reason is they're talking to you, or learn a ton because you weren't planning on talking about that, right? So it's one of the most valuable things to do if you're already talking to them. So my suggestion would actually be, if you're talking to them, start incorporating some of these questions into your scripts and your sales calls. That's really powerful. Anybody else on surveying? Yeah. Yeah, a high NPS score means people are really satisfied with the product because they're willing to recommend it to people. But that NPS methodology is tried and true, and there's a lot of benchmarks. So if you're, a high satisfaction company, you can say we have the satisfaction rate of Apple, right? And that's really generally powerful. We've even used that kind of stuff in our marketing when it's that high. Yeah.
With NPS, do you recommend personal notes from the CEO? Typically it's a very, just give me a number if you recommend these. Do you recommend incorporating that kind of personal touch?
I haven't seen it make a difference because they just need to click a button. one of those options, and that's it. So when you're asking a deeper question, like some of the other ones I had that are open-ended, it's way better to make it personal and personable, but don't make it like drawn out and long. So I've seen drawn out and long, and that's bad, right? Just to get to the point, but have some personality is kind of the play. But with NPS, I've never seen personalization help in any way. Yeah. So the general, again, I'll give the same number I gave before. The general like professional survey methodology is 30. But NPS, I like more. All of them I like more. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. With 30, with NPS, you can get a directional thing. Realistically, if you haven't had hundreds of customers, NPS can be like a little like misleading because there's not much you can really do with it. And the other thing about NPS is when people click, a lot of the tools will let you have an open-ended kind of question of like, why did you recommend our product or something like that. Those are also really powerful. So I wouldn't do NPS without having the open-ended right after as well. Any other questions on surveying? Cool. There might be questions at the end too, depending on when we have to go. So, as I was saying, I wanted to switch gears and talk more about some principles, philosophies, a bunch of stuff I've learned that you're probably not going to hear about in these talks. So one big one is like growth is not one size fits all. So now there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of content, there's a lot of lectures and tactics and even strategies out there. Just remember that your business, your customer, and your product are much different than even your competitors in most cases, 99% of the time. So you don't want to just slap someone else's growth strategy on your business and expect it to work. I can't stress this enough, and I can tell you that there's lots of companies that I've seen that waste months, if not even like years, quarters, whatever, just trying to jam a strategy that's just not going to work for their customer. This is why I emphasize all the qualitative stuff up front, because that stuff can help you be more contextual to your customer and your business and your market. This guy was actually programming on 2 computers. He's one of our engineers. I was just talking to him about an hour ago. But growth is not a set of hacks. Don't forget that either. Now we call it growth marketing and stuff like that, and we have these growth hacks, but it's not a set of hacks. It's like something you're trying to do in a sustainable way. That's why qualitative stuff is important, quantitative data is important, all that kind of stuff is really critical. Another one, which we see a lot, is growth is not about using dark patterns. Dark patterns are when you're deceiving people to click on buttons and buy stuff and things like that. You could say it's the shady internet marketing world that kind of really popularized some of these, like the big buttons and the super crazy arrows, which are all great tactics if people really want to buy your stuff, but they're not good if you're manipulating them. Another one, which I think is really important, so I'm going to double down on it. This is an early Kissmetrics team picture, I guess. But it's really a company-wide mindset, and all of you folks have relatively small companies, so you should ingrain this in your companies now instead of waiting. I really like this about Netflix. They have a big culture deck, which I'm sure many of you have seen, but this is a really interesting big question they ask themselves around culture, which is what gives Netflix the best chance of continuous success for many generations of technology and people? Sounds like growth to me. So even them, one of their core questions and philosophies around culture is hitting on this. If you have folks that work at Netflix, you should ask them a little bit about the culture. It's actually pretty impressive at their scale to think like this and think much more like a startup than most companies. Again, one of your to-dos here would be you got to do what's right for your company culture. What works for some other company or some other culture, or even your last company, if you've had multiple companies, won't necessarily work for this one. One of the main reasons people don't think about is the environment changes all the time. So, whether it's the funding environment, the market, the fact that a competitor pops up out of nowhere these days, like probably weekly in some of your markets, the culture is what keeps you going. I gave a talk at Mozilla, and I was slightly talking shit, but they have a bunch of values, and their values don't align with growth, just because they have these really stringent values around their culture. So the internet is a global public resource that must remain open and accessible. That one's cool. I guess it relates to growth. I think it doesn't hurt growth. The internet must enrich the lives of individual human beings. Cool. Okay, I think you can grow with that one. There's one about security. I think that one's fine. Then I found these, which really started making my radar go off and like helping them understand that like these are probably ones that are hurting their growth. Individuals must have the ability to shape the internet and their own experiences on it, which is a little fuzzy. It's kind of vague. So you could say that, oh, everything needs to be customized. If you folks have used Firefox, you know what I mean. That's the way they started. That's the way that they grew, but that's not the way they're going to keep growing. The effectiveness of the internet as a public resource depends upon interoperability. So like protocols, data formats, content, innovation, and decentralized participation worldwide. I'm not that much of a hater on that one, but you can look at that one and be like, I don't know. Like, the internet is definitely a public resource, but there's a lot of walled gardens out there, and you might need to use those for growth, like Facebook and Twitter and blah, blah, blah. This one's really interesting, and the one that I really hit them with, and I got a lot of nods on the team there. Transparent community-based processes promote participation, accountability, and trust. If you go look at their wikis around the A/B tests and experiments they run, you'll see a lot of debates about things that none of you would be debating. But they're debating it because they have had these values, and these values now probably need to change or be iterated if they really want to grow. And they had me coming in there and talking to them, so I think they kind of want to grow or understand this stuff. And so this was one of the big digs I had at them. Not in a bad way, it's just like, all this stuff, especially in an early stage startup, you probably haven't written down these kind of values and stuff, but there's a bunch of beliefs, a bunch of thinking you have that cause you to start the company. Just make sure those things are, rigorously thought about as you're thinking about growth. Otherwise, there'll be a bunch of stuff you're not willing to do that might not actually be that bad and are just misaligned with whatever you think your values are. This is one of my favorite ones, and now I'm going to talk about a lot of somewhat basic stuff, but things that we all forget. One of the keys, though, is to treat your company like a lab. Think about things more with the experimentation mindset. I know all of you are in this room, associated with 500 startups, so I'm not going to drill into that because you're going to learn a lot about that if you already don't know about experimentation and how to do that. But one of the things I wanted to talk about are a bunch of tools that I use. So I have this thing that I call binary decision making. Oftentimes you're faced with a decision and you have like 10 options. The goal should be to break it down so you have 2 options, and then you create kind of a flow chart. And then I just looked up decision making on Wikipedia, and it basically breaks down what I'm talking about, right? And they just wanted to give an example from Wikipedia, but the big thing is it's the process of identifying and choosing alternatives based on the values and preferences of the decision maker, which oftentimes on growth is the team. And so, one classic one, which is not related to many of you, but it's like, should we raise money? Yes or no? Most people don't make it a yes or no. They get into all these things like, we don't have enough customers, we need money for marketing, we need money for sales, we can't grow without raising money, we can do a friends and family thing, when at the end of the day, it's like, well, do you know what to do with the money if you take it today? And that's the first question, yes or no. If the answer is no, don't take the money, go figure out what you're gonna do with the money once they give it to you, and then the answer will be yes, maybe, right? Or you might realize you can be profitable in no time. Right, but that kind of exercise, it's amazing how many of us just don't go there when we should be. This is just another example of a decision tree. I know these things sound boring and kind of like basic. You learned them in elementary school, maybe, but these are the things you're doing in your head, whether you know it or not. And if you're a team and you've got more than one person to get agreement on something and get alignment, these kind of things can be really helpful, even if they sound stupid. I've had a 30-person room trying to figure out dinner where we had to do this. And it worked. It kind of sucked. And it gets better. I'm going to get back to growth now. Although this was about growth. You can take it to another level, and this is what a lot of growth is about, and turn one of those, some call this like a fish diagram or a decision tree. But if you notice here, there's basically raising sales, we can cut prices, we can launch a loyalty card, we can do nothing, identifying costs, and then going deeper in and saying, well, what does that actually mean for our revenue and things like that. So a decision tree can even add numbers to it, and you can go crazier. For example, if that 30-person team was on a budget, we might have started breaking down options based on how much we think it's going to cost to eat there. Super geeky, super nerdy, probably takes too long, and you should just go eat around the corner, but it's just an example of like the things we don't do that we probably should be doing. Another one I really like is critical thinking, and we all kind of do it every day. But the part about it that I think we miss is that it's actually about having a systematic approach instead of just saying, oh, I can critically think about a problem when I see it. It's more about, well, how'd you do it? How'd you come to that conclusion? How do you know that's the right conclusion? And all that kind of rigor, which we oftentimes miss because we're critically thinking all the time, like deciding what to eat for lunch. And then I looked up kind of some more critical thinking stuff, and these are just words that explain it a lot deeper. So you're inquisitive, systematic, analytical, open-minded, confident in reasoning, truth-seeking, and judicious. All of us need to be this. This isn't like, oh, maybe I critical think, maybe I'm systematic, maybe I'm not. These are all important things if you're running a business. And all of you are, if you're not today, you're running a business tomorrow, hopefully. That's why I like to get to the spreadsheet, because that means it's real. That means it's a business, even if it's a bunch of assumptions. This is one of my mottos, so I do like to share it. The only way to do more is do more. So when you're debating, just remember that. I also like to break down businesses into these two things, and that's it: product and distribution. I really feel like you can take a lens on any business and break it down into these two things. So I'm going to give some tips in hopefully 2 minutes. Just kidding. I'll take a little longer. But yeah, let me start with product and just give some things that I use all the time to evaluate, think about product, etc. So there's this cool book that I found that has this technique for producing new ideas. And basically it's a 5-step formula, and it's from the 1940s, so it's really old school. There's actually a Brain Pickings article that breaks down the whole book, so you don't have to read the book like I did. But basically, it'll help you understand that when you come up with an idea, there's actually these steps you go through, even if you're not conscious of them. Once I became conscious of these steps and read this book, I started focusing much more on raw materials. And these are all just these things out there in the world that we're using to come up with ideas. And the more time I spent just getting raw materials, the better my ideas became. That was my bottleneck. But many of us have different bottlenecks. Like, we'll try to decide really quickly when we should sleep on it, for example. Or we'll have an idea and we'll get stuck on it and not realize we need to stop thinking about it. I know a lot of folks that are engineers tend to have this problem and come up with a solution while they're sleeping. This explains all of that. So it's not just about a new business idea, it's about any new idea. It's even about problem solving if you want to dig deeper into it. So it's really fantastic. I got a bit.ly down there. Yeah. It's called A Technique for Producing New Ideas is actually the name of the book. Yeah. But the Brain Pickings article covers the whole book. It's a very short book. It's pretty awesome, but it's really cool. So yeah, and I have the link, and it's in the deck, and you guys can all see the deck. So this is another one. My buddy Samuel Helick came up with this. He has a site called User Onboard. Have any of you seen that site? Cool. It's called useronboard.com, and he breaks down user flows. It's a fantastic site. He has a very comical opinion about the flows and all that, so you should definitely check it out. And he does these little like arrows like this. But this is really cool because we forget that people aren't buying our products. They're actually buying better versions of themselves, or buying our products to make themselves better. And so this everyone tends to know this, especially because we're all aged here. But you're trying to create Fireball Mario from nothing Mario, basically. I can jump a little bit Mario. MVPs. I'm not going to get into this. Have you guys seen this graphic? Have any of you? Yeah. Okay. Good. I got a lot of nods. Great. This is my favorite because we're not making a car. We're making a skateboard, and we use this line a lot when we get in our heads about what features we should add and get all confused. Like, well, what's the skateboard? What are we trying to learn with the skateboard? Will it get us from A to B? It might be slow, it might require manual work, but that's okay as long as we're learning whether even a skateboard will get people from A to B. So this is really valuable. It comes from Spotify. I got a link there that probably still works, hopefully, on the article that mentions this. This is another one from our friends at Intercom. They have a whole book on product management that I encourage all of you to read when you're thinking about product. If you haven't read it, pick it up right now and read it. It's amazing. But one of the key things that I found in there that I don't see companies do is if you have features, even if it's an app, a SaaS product, you oftentimes don't think about, out of 100% of our users, what percent are using these different features? So here we have like messages, uploads, chat room, calendar, docs editor, and track time. And if you don't do this, you're not going to understand feature adoption. You're not going to understand what your most important features are based on users actually voting with their time, with their, usually not money in this case, but with their usage. So this has been really enlightening because then you can figure out the difference between things you found important and you think is important versus what they think is important. You can also figure out the difference between the things they say in the qualitative surveys and whether that plays out when you look at usage, which is super critical too. Because they might be saying that they really, really value the calendar, But if they're not using the calendar, you got to find out why. Does it suck? Do they really value it? Are they lying? Do they think the chat room is a calendar? I've had that scenario too. So, this is really valuable because it gives you a quantitative lens on a lot of qualitative stuff too. Okay, so I got some actual growth stuff now, maybe. This is one of my favorite ones, which is if I'm thinking about product, I like to bake it in. I like to bake growth into the product. It's kind of a little bit of a newer thing that people are talking about, but I've been talking about it for years. These are the 5 ways. There are more ways now, but these are the 5 ways to make sure that your product gets as close to growing itself as possible. I've seen this work across every industry, including enterprise, where the product can actually grow itself. So with Powered Bys, it would be like, with Hotjar, Kiss Insights, a company called Drip, and a bunch of these tools that pop up on your website, including another one of mine, Hello Bar. We have a Powered By link or a logo. People view this thing on someone's website, they click it, they go to a landing page, hopefully they sign up for it. That's a funnel. It's Powered By funnel. It's really powerful. If you have it, it'll give you some baseline of users for every single user that you have or a customer that's installed it. Integrations are great. People often don't think about like integrating with Dropbox and making that a growth channel, but it can be, because a lot of these tools, whether it's GitHub, Dropbox, or any of the literally hundreds of thousands of tools you can integrate with, oftentimes there's a bunch of usage there. There's a bunch of users. You can pull in all the users automatically. There's all this cool stuff you can do with integrations. There's also integration landing pages and things like that that can help you get growth as well, because it's just more surface area on your marketing site to drive traffic to. Work emails is great. The old news on that is Yammer really grew inside of an organization by being viral or somewhat viral inside of a company by getting, and Slack's another good example, by inviting all your teammates into a product. Embeds are great. This is like YouTube, SlideShare, etc. Embed what users create on your site, make them embed it somewhere else and see if that'll work. And then invites and referrals, because if you have a mobile app and you aren't using invites and referrals and those, $10 programs, double referrals, you're probably losing out on a big growth channel, because on mobile there's not that many channels. Around what? Oh, sure, yeah. The difference between embeds and integrations is like integrations are more with other products that are out there, and there is a fine line, but like let's say you can integrate with Dropbox. You're not necessarily embedding anything into Dropbox or anything like that. An embed is more like you upload a YouTube video on YouTube and then you embed it on your blog. So they're different strategies, although they're very related because you're using someone else's channel, someone else's product, some other company to help you grow. No worries. Yeah. They could do it if they wanted to. And they could do it faster than you, but usually they're really slow and focus on other things that are not your little small feature. That being said, a lot of these things tend to be on their roadmaps anyways, and they eventually get to them. So if you're just focused on a little feature, then you probably need to think deeper about how you evolve your own opportunity. So, I've had conversations like that with people. I'd say 10% of the time there is a risk, 90% of the time there's no risk. Yeah. Your database. And just like, yeah, so he asked, what do you usually use to measure feature adoption? It's usually your database, because your database has the exact points where people are interacting. So did they create a message? Did they add something to the calendar? And that implies usage. So I actually like going in the database. I don't like using any other tool for that exact analysis. Otherwise, it's not exact. It's like some random script on the site trying to measure it, which your database already has the data. In every case, I start with the database for that exact analysis. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about distribution real quick. This is a method that I really like. It's called the BAB method, and it's a way to essentially do marketing with your copy. One of my buddies, Derek Halpern, really popularized it, but didn't really popularize it. He just put it on a blog post and then never talked about it again, so I'm going to popularize it. But basically, it's a way to describe kind of how to convince someone to use your product or that your product's useful to them by basically doing this order. So the before is, what does the world look like before your product, let's say? The after is describe the world after they've used your solution. And then the bridge is all the different things they need to do to get started with your product and get to that after. And the reason this works really well is because you pull them in. Because what you're doing is when you talk about like before, you're actually talking about their exact current situation, which is here's how shitty your life is without our product. Now imagine how awesome your life would be. Oh yeah, here's how you get that awesome life. And so that's the order, and it works really well because as humans, we want to be pulled in. We want to empathize, right? We want to, we want, and as people, you know, creating this marketing, creating products, we want people to come, we want to solve their problems. So this is a really powerful way. Oftentimes we do it a lot differently. Like, you know, here's all the cool stuff we can do. Doesn't your life suck? Oh, here, let's make it better. But that's not as compelling as like, right now, this sucks, doesn't it? We can make it awesome. Now go do these 100 things we need you to do to make it awesome. People will actually do them if you're convincing enough. And so this works really well. I would encourage you to test it with lots of different things. I test this in my emails too when I'm trying to convince someone of something, and it actually kind of works. Actually works every time. This is a framework I came up with at HubSpot's conference, and I turned it into a thing. And so here's the thing. It's a chart that can help you with any kind of like data that you're looking at, whether it's marketing data, conversion data, to help you understand whether you can run an A/B test or not, and whether you need to get more traffic or not. So I'm just going to walk through it real quick. So let's say this is for your website, and you're looking at different channels to your homepage, just to give a very tangible example. So let's say you have high traffic on one channel, but it has low conversions. Well, if you have a lot of traffic, you can probably run a bunch of A/B tests. So run a bunch of A/B tests. Now, if you have high traffic and high conversions, you get to do a happy dance, but you better watch it because it can drop for so many different reasons, right? And the reason I put the happy dance is Brian Halligan, who's the CEO of HubSpot, is a hippie. And a few years ago, the year after I spoke, or sorry, the year before I spoke, he did a hippie dance on stage, which you guys should definitely check out. He did like a Grateful Dead hippie dance for like, I think a minute or two and got all sweaty and stuff. It's awesome. So anyways, he did a happy dance. It was awesome. And then, so if a channel has low traffic and low conversions, you got to get more traffic because you're not going to be able to A/B test. Oftentimes you might feel like you need to cut the traffic source, but I would really spend time to see if you can get more traffic on it, just to see. And then obviously, if you have high conversions and not enough traffic, go get more traffic so you can do the happy dance and move it up the quadrant. So this is very familiar, like a lot of those quadrants, but it helps you put a lens. Like I've had people like map dots with their marketing channels and put exact traffic and all that, and it's been really powerful because you start really putting a framework against this stupid freaking table that you see in most of the analytics tools that don't tell you much unless you're, you know, super highly analytical or whatever, which most of us aren't. So this is a way to help you sort of understand all the different areas where you could run a bunch of tests, and I've got a bunch of examples, but all you really need to think about is where do we have the most users coming, going, signing up, whatever. So the common areas that I've seen are obviously website traffic, app installs. Welcome emails are powerful because everyone that signs up should be getting a welcome email. So if you're not testing your welcome emails, you should be testing them. Mobile onboarding is big, web onboarding. If you're sending a weekly email, a daily email, a monthly email, those are great testing points because you've probably got a lot of volume on those. If you're sending notifications, that's an obvious one. Most folks test their notifications. Cart/funnel abandonment is huge because if people are dropping off in any funnel, there tends to be a lot of volume there. And then dormant and churned users are often forgotten about. But if you look at some of the stuff a little bit later, you'll see how important that is. I have this template in the deck just so you can use it for whatever. And so this is the last couple slides, and then I'll be done because it's almost 10. I'm probably over time. Andy Johns used to be at Facebook, and he came up with this and shared a bunch about this. There's a Quora link about it, but it's really just about the idea that growth is really compounding a lot like interest. So if you just want to understand that, just go study like interest rates and how they compound over time, and this will make a lot more sense to you. And then work backwards from there to understand that if you have signups and you start getting improvements on your homepage or your funnel for getting more activated folks, the more tests you run and the more improvements you find, the more it compounds. So what that means is that, like, if you have, 100 users this week, and you figure out how to get 10% more next week just by conversions, you have 110, and you probably get to keep that 110 forever. And so when you get another 10% improvement, now you all of a sudden have 121, and it just keeps compounding. But again, I'd be studying a little bit about compound interest and just interest rates and stuff just to understand this. It's not that complicated, but it does require wrapping your head around it. It's a really powerful concept. Once you understand it, the way you do experimentation and growth changes dramatically. These are a bunch of growth questions. How do you increase rate of acquisition? What can you do to activate more users in their first N days? What are the levers for engagement and retention, and how can you pull them? And how do I bring churned users back into the system to resurrect them from dead? This is growth 101 right here, and most people don't even know it. These 4 questions sum up every business out there and how you can ask key questions to figure out how to grow the businesses. There's no other questions you really need if you want to create growth. Last but not least, the folks at Social Capital Partnership put out this deck about growth accounting, which covers both B2B, B2C, and freemium, and hybrids, and marketplaces, if you really dig in. And I know I was talking about compound interest. This is very related to that. So when you look at like a consumer business, usually you're looking at like monthly active users. This applies to a freemium business as well as other B2B businesses where you need high retention and you're really worried about users and their activity. So here it talks about how in the graph you need to add up like the churned users, you subtract those, the resurrected users, which are the people you brought back, and the new users, and how you can use that to analyze your active usage. And the key to this is like, think of these things, and this is just MRR graphs, which I'm sure many of you have seen if you're in the business of subscription. And there's a lot of tools out there like ProfitWell and Baremetrics and stuff that can do this part automated. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of tools that can do that part automated yet if you're in a user growth scenario versus a revenue growth scenario. But the key here is that when you do A/B tests and you start improving growth, you should see improvements in this. If you don't, then you're not really doing growth and changing your reality, right? Because this is reality. How many actives do you have, and how much money are you making? And then the next level of this, which I don't have a slide on, is once you start getting good at this, then you can guess, actually project, not even guess, guesstimate what's going to happen next month. And that's really when you know you have a real good handle on growth. That's my email. Seriously, any of you can email me anytime. If I don't respond within a day, shoot me another email. I just use SaneBox, so it filters people I don't know yet. But some of you I know, so yeah, happy to help anytime with any of this stuff and more. So, thanks.